They didn't call me stupid to my face. They didn't have to. They had a quieter way of doing it, a cleaner way, the kind that leaves no marks but does all the damage. They just compared every single day at every single meal in every single conversation, like breathing, like they didn't even notice they were doing it. Your brother would have finished that by now. Donovan never complains about this stuff. Why can't you just be more like your brother, Celine? 24 years of that. 24 years of being held up next to someone else's shine and found dim by comparison. And the worst part? The part that used to keep me awake at 3 in the morning staring at the water stain on my apartment's ceiling? They were proud of themselves for it. They genuinely believed they were motivating me. What they were actually doing was building something inside me. Slowly, quietly, the way pressure builds inside something sealed shut. They had no idea what was going to come out when it finally cracked open. Because here is what my family never understood about me. They were so busy watching my brother that they completely forgot to watch me. And I had been watching everything. Every lie, every document, every favor, every carefully constructed illusion that my brother had spent a decade building. I had it all. And the night of his $1 million charity gala, the biggest moment of Donovan Voss's carefully curated life, was exactly when I decided to use it. Welcome to Soulful Drama Stories. I'm so glad you're here for this because this story is going to hit different. Get yourself comfortable, get your drink, get settled in. Because the quiet ones, we don't just survive, we wait, and then we show up at the gala. My name is Celine Voss. I am 24 years old, 5'4", Black and Puerto Rican, with my late grandmother's eyes and my father's stubbornness, and a mind that has been described by exactly 3 people in my life as extraordinary, none of whom share my last name. I grew up in Scottsdale, Arizona, in a house with travertine floors and a pool nobody used, and a refrigerator covered in one person's achievements. That person was not me. My mother, Diane Voss, 52, was an interior designer with a gift for making spaces look like nobody actually lived in them. She was beautiful in that practiced, precise way that takes an hour every morning to achieve. She loved her children, she just loved them in very different quantities. My father, Gerald Voss, 56, owned a mid-sized commercial printing company he had built from nothing and was deeply proud of, the way men are proud of things they made with their hands. He was not a bad man, I want to say that clearly, because this story is not about a monster. It is about something much more ordinary, and therefore much more dangerous. It is about a good man who had a blind spot the size of his oldest child. And then there was Donovan, my brother, 30 years old at the start of this story. 6'2", broad-shouldered, classically handsome in the way that made people instinctively trust him before he opened his mouth. He had our mother's easy charm and our father's drive, and something extra that was entirely his own, a particular talent for making everyone in the room feel like they were the most important person in it. Donovan was the golden child, not in a fairy tale way, in a real, lived, daily way, the kind that shapes everything around it, the way a planet shapes its orbit. He had graduated from Arizona State with honors, gone directly into commercial real estate development, and by 28 had closed 3 deals that my father talked about at every family dinner like chapters from scripture. By 30, he had launched his own development firm, Voss and Partners, with the kind of confidence that only people who have never genuinely failed tend to carry. He was impressive, I won't lie. He was genuinely, legitimately impressive on the surface. The problem with impressive surfaces is what they're designed to hide. And me? I was the second child, the afterthought. Not literally, my parents wanted 2 kids and got 2 kids, but emotionally, in the way that energy and attention distribute themselves in a house with 1 supernova and 1 quiet planet. I was good at school, not good the way Donovan was good, loudly, visibly, in ways people clapped for. I was good in the way that goes unnoticed, consistent, deep, the kind of student who actually understood the material instead of performing understanding. I was interested in financial systems, data, the patterns underneath numbers, the way economies breathed, expanded, contracted. My undergraduate thesis on municipal bond market inefficiencies had been published in a small academic journal when I was 22. My thesis advisor had called it meticulous. My father's response when I told him about the publication? That's great, Celine. Hey, did you see Donovan's feature in the Phoenix Business Journal? I had seen it. In fact, I had seen everything. That was the thing nobody in my family thought to account for. The overlooked child sees everything because nobody bothers to hide anything from her. I want to tell you exactly when I started keeping records. Not because I planned revenge from that moment. I wasn't thinking about revenge then. I was thinking about protection. It was 2 years before the gala. I was 22, freshly graduated, working as a junior financial analyst at a regional investment firm called Carver and Bell in Scottsdale. Entry level, the kind of job where you do the work that makes other people look smart. I was fine with that for the moment. I was learning. I was also, on evenings and weekends, doing something my parents didn't know about. I was consulting small clients, mostly small business owners who needed someone to look at their books and tell them the truth. I charged very little because the work wasn't about the money yet. It was about getting sharper, faster, better at finding the thing hiding underneath the numbers. I was good at it, genuinely, quietly good in the way I was good at most things nobody in my family noticed. Meanwhile, Donovan's firm was growing. New offices, new projects, a big mixed-use development in Tempe that was getting press coverage. My parents were incandescent with pride. My mother had framed the Phoenix Business Journal piece and hung it in the hallway next to the family photos. I will tell you what was not in that hallway. My academic publication, my college diploma, a single photograph from my graduation, which my father had attended and spent 40 minutes on his phone. There was a photo of Donovan at a groundbreaking ceremony. Donovan in a hard hat, grinning, holding a shovel, looking like the physical embodiment of the American dream. I walked past that photo every time I visited home. I never said anything, but I started paying attention to Donovan's business press coverage in a different way. Not the way a proud sibling reads it, the way a financial analyst reads it. And that's when I started seeing things that didn't add up. The Tempe project was projected at $42 million. The investor deck, which had been circulated publicly as part of a media push, showed projections that were genuinely impressive, 15% annual returns for a 7-year hold. My father had invested $250,000 in it, a fact I knew because my mother had told me, glowing on a Sunday phone call, as if this were a gift rather than a transaction. I ran the numbers on a Tuesday night in my apartment, with a bowl of reheated pasta going cold beside my keyboard. The projections didn't work. Not in the obvious, dramatic way, in the quiet way. The kind that takes someone who actually understands municipal infrastructure costs, regional zoning patterns, and interest rate sensitivity to spot. The return model assumed a lease-up timeline that was aggressive beyond reason for that specific market segment. It assumed construction cost stability in a period where every material metric was moving in the wrong direction. And the debt structure, which I had pieced together from public filing fragments and 2 SEC disclosure documents I found through an hour of methodical searching, had a refinancing exposure window that the investor deck didn't mention at all. I sat back in my chair and looked at the screen for a long time. Then I opened a new document and started writing everything down. Dates, sources, numbers, the gap between what was presented and what the data actually showed. I told myself I was doing it for clarity, for my own understanding. I told myself I wasn't building a file. I was building a file. If this story is already making you feel something, do me a favor right now. Hit that like button and subscribe to Soulful Drama Stories. We're a community built for the people who were overlooked and underestimated. And I promise you, this story is just getting started. Drop a comment and tell me, have you ever been compared to a sibling and found lacking? You are not alone. Keep going with me. There are moments that split your life into before and after. Mine happened on a Sunday in October, 6 months before the gala. I had driven to my parents' house for what my mother called a family dinner and what was in practice a Donovan update with food. The house smelled like pot roast and my mother's specific brand of vanilla candle. My father was watching football. My mother was in the kitchen arranging things on serving platters with the focus of someone diffusing an explosive. Donovan wasn't there yet. Donovan was always 20 minutes late, which everyone waited for without complaint, the way you wait for weather. I set the table, poured the water, asked my mother if she needed help, and got a distracted, "You're such a sweetheart." That meant no, and also meant she hadn't really registered that I was standing right next to her. Donovan arrived with a bottle of wine and a story, and the room rearranged itself immediately, the way it always did. My father muted the game. My mother's face opened up like a window in spring. He sat across from me, big smile, the effortless kind. "Celine, how's the number crunching life?" He said it warmly, the way you'd ask a child about their drawing. Not cruel, just bottomless in its condescension. "Good," I said. "How's the project?" Something moved across his face, quick, like a cloud shadow, gone in an instant. "Phenomenal, actually. I have news." He told us about the gala. Voss and Partners was hosting a fundraiser, black tie, $1,000 a plate dinner at the Meridian Grand in downtown Phoenix. The proceeds would go to a local affordable housing nonprofit, one Donovan had personally founded 2 years ago, called New Ground, Arizona. The projected ticket sales and sponsorships were expected to clear $1 million. My mother's hands flew to her face. My father's chest expanded visibly. "The governor's office is attending," Donovan said, with the practiced ease of someone who had been rehearsing this line. "So are 3 city council members, the head of the Downtown Development Authority, and most of the top commercial real estate players in the valley. It's going to be the event of the year." My father reached across the table and grabbed Donovan's arm the way men do when words aren't enough. "That's my boy," he said, the specific warmth in his voice that I had been measuring my whole life. My mother was already talking about what she would wear. I ate my pot roast. I smiled at the right moments, and I was thinking about the file on my laptop. Because here's what I knew that nobody at that table knew. New Ground, Arizona, the nonprofit my brother had founded to house vulnerable families and was now using as the centerpiece of a $1 million public event, had a financial structure that I had spent 4 months quietly researching. What I had found was not what the brochures said. What I had found was something that in 6 weeks of careful verification had gone from a suspicion to a documented pattern. And it was bad. Not bad like a mistake, bad like a choice. I excused myself to the bathroom halfway through dinner, ran cold water over my wrists the way I did when I needed to think, and looked at my own face in the mirror. When, I thought, when do you use it? The answer arrived quietly, the way the truest answers always do. When it will matter most. I went back to the table, I passed the rolls, I congratulated my brother on the gala. He patted my hand the way you'd pat a child's. "Thanks, sis. You're invited, obviously. Just maybe don't wear anything too flashy. This is Donovan's night." He laughed. My parents laughed. I smiled. And I thought, no, this is mine. Let me be careful here, because accuracy matters. I am not going to tell you things I didn't verify. I spent 4 months doing due diligence the way I did everything, methodically, without drama, without assumption. I followed the numbers. I let the numbers tell me the story. Here is what the numbers said. New Ground, Arizona, the nonprofit, had been receiving donations for 2 years. Publicly, beautifully. There had been a launch event, press coverage, a website with photographs of families in front of homes they were supposedly being helped into. Donovan's name was on every piece of letterhead. He gave interviews about it. He had, at various points, described it as the most important thing he'd ever done. The nonprofit's 990 filing, the public tax document that charitable organizations are required to submit, showed something interesting in the administrative expense line. Not outrageous on its face, management fees to a consulting firm called Apex Strategic LLC for organizational development and executive support, about $300,000 over 2 years, which was high but not by itself disqualifying. What was interesting was Apex Strategic LLC. I spent 2 evenings finding it. It was a registered limited liability company in Nevada, formed 18 months ago, single member. The name attached to the member was not Donovan's. It was a name I didn't recognize. A Troy Vickers. I searched Troy Vickers for a week, found almost nothing, which itself was information. Then I ran the address listed for Apex Strategic LLC against property records. The business address was a UPS store mailbox in Henderson, Nevada. I sat with that for a while. Then I pulled Donovan's personal financial disclosure documents, the ones attached to a small business lending application he'd made the previous year, which were technically public record through an SBA database that most people don't know exists. The consulting income on his personal return for the prior year included a line item from a Nevada-based consulting arrangement. I didn't have the full picture. I want to be precise about that. What I had was a pattern, a documented, verifiable, chronological pattern of money flowing from a charitable organization into a shell entity with no traceable footprint at a time when that organization was also being used as the public-facing centerpiece of my brother's professional reputation. I am a financial analyst. I know what this kind of pattern typically means. I also know that patterns are not proof. So I did one more thing. I called a contact I had made at the Arizona Attorney General's office through a continuing education seminar 6 months earlier, a woman named Dana Ferris, 41, who worked in the Charitable Solicitation Compliance Division. I had spoken to her twice before about an unrelated client matter. She was sharp, and she was by the book, and she took financial irregularities in nonprofits personally, in the way that people do when they've seen too many real victims. I did not tell her it was my brother. I sent her the documentation as an anonymous tip through the formal intake process. 3 weeks later, she called me. Not about the tip, she didn't know it was me. She called to check in, the way professional contacts occasionally do. I answered her questions carefully. I hung up, knowing that the wheels were already moving. All I had to do was be in the room when they arrived. Here's the part of the story I don't tell anyone, the part that happened 2 weeks before the gala. My mother called me on a Thursday evening. I was at my desk, still at the office at 7 p.m., finishing a client report. Her voice had that careful tone, the one she used when she was delivering something wrapped in softness so you wouldn't notice the weight of it. "Celine, honey, we need to talk about the gala seating." I waited. "Donovan has some very important guests coming. Business associates, the governor's people, some investors. He's asked that the immediate family sit at table 14. Table 14. I looked it up later on the venue's published floor plan, which had been included in a press release. Table 14 was at the back left of the room, near the kitchen corridor, the table traditionally used for staff overflow and minor plus ones. He didn't want any distractions during the main program, my mother continued. You understand, sweetheart. It's a big night for him. I understood. I was 24 years old and my family had assigned me a table near the kitchen at my brother's event because my presence might constitute a distraction. I said, "Of course, Mom, I understand completely." And I did. I understood that I had been made invisible so many times in so many small ways over so many years that it had become the family's baseline. Assumption. They didn't even think of it as unkind. It was just the arrangement. Donovan in the center, Celine at table 14. I got off the phone and sat very still for a moment. Then I opened my laptop and I emailed Dana Ferris. Not the tip, not more documentation, just a question. Is there any update on the timeline for the New Ground Arizona review? I'm asking because I'm aware of a public fundraising event associated with that organization on November 14th that may be relevant to the scope of your inquiry. Her reply came the following morning. Celine, funny you should mention that. We were actually discussing that event internally this week. The timing is significant from a compliance standpoint. I can't share details of an active review, but I'd say your instinct about the timing is sound. I read that email 3 times. Then I did something I had been putting off. I responded to my brother's gala invitation. Attending, looking forward to it. Table 14? Fine. I'd be heard from table 14. We're right in the middle of the story, and I need to stop for just a second. Because if you're watching this and you've been the one they put at table 14 your whole life, the one they seated near the kitchen while someone else stood in the spotlight, I need you to hear this. Your time is coming. It always comes for the people who do the work. Subscribe to Soulful Drama Stories if you haven't yet, and leave me a comment. Tell me you're table 14. This community sees you. Now, let's get back to Celine. November 14th, the Meridian Grand in downtown Phoenix. The building was stunning, glass and steel catching the desert night sky, twinkling lights strung through the entrance palms, a red carpet that wasn't actually red, but deep charcoal, which was somehow more expensive looking, women in gowns and men in tuxedos moving through the warm Arizona evening with that particular ease of people who are used to rooms like this. I wore navy blue, simple, structured, nothing that competed for attention. I had spent $112 on the dress at a Nordstrom rack 2 weeks earlier, which felt like the right amount to spend on something I was going to set on fire. Metaphorically, mostly. My parents were at the entrance when I arrived. My mother looked beautiful, she always did at events. My father was in a tuxedo, standing with the particular stiffness of a man who was more comfortable in khakis but was very proud to be in this room. Donovan was already inside, working the room I could see through the glass, moving from cluster to cluster with that easy, open-handed confidence that I had watched my whole life. He spotted me when I came in, gave me the chin nod, the one that meant, "Good, you came, stay out of the way." I smiled. "You look great, sis," he said as he passed me on his way to someone more important. He barely slowed down. "Thank you," I said. "So do you." I meant it. He did look great. He looked like exactly what he had built himself to look like: successful, trustworthy, the kind of man you'd hand your money to. I took my seat at table 14. The evening was organized the way these events always are: a cocktail hour, seated dinner, remarks from sponsors, a video about New Ground, Arizona, beautifully produced, footage of families, children, earnest testimonials, and Donovan's voice in a narration track that was warm and specific and practiced. My father watched that video with his hand over his mouth, the way he did when he was genuinely moved. I had brought my phone, and I had prepared something. 6 days before the gala, I had done 2 things. The first was that I had submitted a formal, detailed, sourced complaint to the Arizona Attorney General's Charitable Solicitation Division, following up my initial anonymous tip with full documentation. My name on it this time. Every number, every filing date, every discrepancy. The Apex Strategic LLC connection, the management fee pattern, the shell company address, the personal income correlation. Dana Ferris had acknowledged receipt within 4 hours. Her reply was 3 sentences, carefully worded, professionally neutral. The third sentence read, "Given the timeline you've identified around the November 14th event, this has been escalated for priority review." The second thing I had done was compile a summary document, clean, formatted, factual, no editorializing. The kind of document that speaks entirely for itself because it doesn't need help. I had emailed it to 11 people: the 3 city council members who had confirmed attendance at the gala, the executive director of the Downtown Development Authority, the managing editor of the Phoenix Business Journal, who had written Donovan's feature piece, and who I had a professional email relationship with from a story she'd done on small business lending that I'd been quoted in, 2 of the largest investor names that had appeared in press coverage of Voss and Partners deals, the CEO of the Affordable Housing Advocacy Organization that had publicly endorsed New Ground, Arizona, and 1 more person: my father. I had sent my father the document at 8 p.m. the night before the gala with a subject line that read simply, "Dad, I need you to read this before tomorrow night. All of it. I love you. I did not know if he had read it. I would find out soon enough. The dinner plates were being cleared. The MC, a local television anchor who did these things on weekends, was stepping back to the podium to introduce the final segment of the evening, the presentation of the raised funds, the remarks from Donovan, and a live pledge drive to close the night. The room was full and warm and buzzing with that specific energy of people who feel good about themselves. I looked at my phone under the table. 3 new emails. 2 from names I recognized from my distribution list. 1 from Dana Ferris. Dana's read, Celine, you should know that as of this evening, our office has issued a formal notice of investigation to New Ground, Arizona, and its associated entities. This is now a matter of public record. D. I put my phone face down on the table. My hands were completely steady. The MC was saying Donovan's name. The room was applauding. My brother was walking to the stage. Donovan gave a beautiful speech. I want to be honest about that because it was. He was gifted in that way. The personal story, the humble origins my parents had given both of us, but that he claimed as uniquely his own, the mission of New Ground, Arizona, the families helped, the homes made possible. He hit every note. The room was with him completely. He thanked my parents by name. The room applauded. My mother cried, prettily. My father's shoulders squared with pride. He did not mention me, obviously. He was winding toward the pledge drive, the close, the moment where the room would reach for their checkbooks and the number on the board would climb toward 1 million, when the doors at the back of the room opened. 2 men and a woman came in, business casual in a room full of black tie. They spoke quietly to the event coordinator near the entrance. The event coordinator's face changed. She walked to the MC, spoke in his ear. The MC's face changed. Donovan, at the podium, was mid-sentence. He felt the energy shift in the room the way performers do, that animal instinct, and his eyes tracked to the back. He found the woman from the Attorney General's office, and she found him. I watched my brother's face go still. Not panicked, not yet. He was too good for panic. But something underneath the performance went quiet, the way a machine goes quiet when the power cuts. The MC stepped to the microphone. Ladies and gentlemen, we've been asked to take a brief recess. Please enjoy the dessert service and we'll resume the program shortly. Murmuring, movement, phones coming out. Because at that exact moment, the Phoenix Business Journal managing editor, who was seated at table 3 and had received my document the evening before and had spent the morning making calls, published a piece on their website. It wasn't long, it didn't need to be. The headline read, New Ground Arizona Founders Charity under investigation for alleged financial irregularities. The room found out about it the way rooms find out about things now, person by person, phone by phone, until the murmur became a wave. My father was 3 tables away. I watched him take his phone out. I watched him look at the screen. He had the document I had sent him last night, and now he had the news story confirming it, and I watched him read the headline, and I watched the blood leave his face. He looked up, across the room. He found me, at table 14, near the kitchen corridor, where I had been assigned. I looked back at him. I didn't smile, I didn't look away, I just looked at my father, steadily, the way a person looks at someone they love and are also telling the truth to for the very first time. He stood up. He walked toward me, and in the center of the room, Donovan was speaking urgently and quietly to the woman from the AG's office, and the MC was looking at his notes and not knowing what to do with them, and $1,000 a plate worth of Phoenix's most prominent people were reading their phones and looking at a man whose entire surface had just developed a crack that the light was pouring through. My father reached table 14. He sat down in the chair across from me. He looked at the tablecloth for a moment, then at me. "How long have you known?" he said. His voice was low, very even. 4 months, I said. Verified. He was quiet. I sent it to the AG's office anonymously first, and then formally with my name 6 days ago. I sent you the document last night because you deserved to know before it became public. I didn't want you to find out from a news story. My father looked at me with an expression I had never seen on his face before, not in 24 years. It was the look of a man seeing something clearly that he had been standing too close to for too long to see. "You've been watching this," he said, not a question. "I've been watching a lot of things, Dad, for a long time." He put his hands flat on the table. He was quiet for a long moment. Around us, the room was buzzing, shifting, the whole carefully constructed evening coming apart at its seams. My father put $250,000 into his fund. I know. I flagged that specifically in the document. The AG's office will have to address investor exposure as part of the review. He looked at me. "Why didn't you come to me first, before all of this?" And this was the question, the real one, the one underneath the evening. I took a breath. "Because, Dad, every time I've brought you something, every achievement, every concern, every truth, you've responded by looking past me at Donovan. I learned a long time ago that the only way anything I did was going to be seen was if it was impossible to look away from." My father's jaw worked. "I made it impossible to look away from. That's not cruelty. That's the language that was ever going to work in our family." He was quiet for a long time. The noise of the room washed around table 14, like we were inside something still and private, while everything outside moved. My father stood up from table 14. He reached out and put his hand on my shoulder, not the absent pat of a man who's thinking of someone else, a real hand, a present hand. "I owe you a real conversation, more than one." "Yes," I said. "You do." He went to find my mother. I sat at table 14 in the back of the room near the kitchen corridor, and I picked up my water glass and I drank it slowly, and I felt something in my chest that I hadn't felt before in this particular combination, seen and free at the same time. I want to be precise about the outcome because this story deserves honesty even at its resolution. Donovan's situation was not resolved in a single dramatic night. Real life doesn't work that way, and I think you'd respect me less if I pretended it did. The Arizona AG's investigation into New Ground, Arizona took 11 months. What they found confirmed and expanded on my documentation. The Apex Strategic LLC payments were found to constitute improper self-dealing under Arizona's charitable solicitation laws. The amount was just over $400,000 over 2 years. Donovan did not go to prison. These cases rarely end that way when the attorney cooperates and the money is partially recoverable. What he did face was a formal consent judgment requiring full restitution to the nonprofit, a 5-year bar from serving as an officer or director of any Arizona-registered nonprofit organization, and a referral to the state bar for the attorneys who had structured the LLC arrangement. His firm, Voss and Partners, lost 3 of its largest clients in the month following the news coverage. The Tempe project went into restructuring. 2 of the investor group members, including names I recognized from my distribution list, quietly exited their positions. Donovan called me 6 weeks after the gala. It was a Sunday morning. I was making coffee in my apartment. The good kind, the slow pour-over kind that takes patience and attention. My phone rang, and I saw his name, and I let it ring twice while I thought about whether I was ready. I picked up. He didn't say hello. He said, "Did you enjoy it?" I thought about that for a moment. "No," I said, honestly. "I didn't enjoy it. I needed it to happen. Those are different things." Silence. "You could have come to me," he said. "You could have told me what you'd found." "I could have," I said, "but you would have managed me. You would have given me the version of the explanation designed to keep me quiet. You're very good at that, Donovan. You always have been." More silence. "There were real families," he said, and his voice cracked on it just slightly, which was the most real thing I had ever heard from my brother. Real families who were supposed to be helped. Yes, I said, there were. That's exactly why I did what I did. He hung up. I finished my coffee. I don't know what my brother will become from here. I genuinely don't. People change or they don't. The crack in the surface either lets the light in or it lets the water in, and those produce very different outcomes. I hope for the former. I will not pretend I'm confident of it. But that was his work to do, not mine. My parents were harder and more important. My father called me the Monday after the gala. Not Sunday evening, Monday morning, which told me he had thought about it overnight and was calling as a deliberate act rather than an emotional impulse. That was very like him. That was actually one of the things I respected about him. He said, I want to understand your work. Tell me what you're doing. So I told him, all of it. The consultancy I had been quietly building alongside my day job, the client list that had grown to 14 small businesses, the financial modeling work I had been developing into a methodology I was beginning to think had real scalability, the offer I had received the previous month from a Phoenix-based fintech startup to come on as their head of financial analytics. I had not told my family about the offer. He listened to all of it, asked 2 clarifying questions, real questions. That's serious work, he said when I finished. Yes, I said, it is. I didn't know you were doing any of this. Dad, you didn't ask. The silence that followed was the most honest one I had ever shared with my father. No, he said, I didn't. I'm asking now. Some conversations happen 20 years late. They are still worth having. I accepted the fintech offer 2 weeks after that call. My mother cried when I told her. Happy tears, which I had not always been the person who produced those. My daughter, she said, which was 2 words, but they contained something that 20 years of "that's great, honey" had never contained. The weight of being seen. You're still here. I know, because people who have been overlooked in their own families do not leave this kind of story early. They stay. They need the ending. If that is you, please subscribe to Soulful Drama Stories and turn on your notifications. This community was built for exactly the person who is watching this right now, and I have something I want to say to you directly before we finish. It has been 14 months since the gala. Here is where things stand. I am the head of financial analytics at a company called Bridgepoint Data Solutions, a fintech startup in Phoenix that builds financial tools for underserved small business owners. The work is meaningful in the specific way that only work built from honest ground can be. It uses everything I am, the data mined, the pattern recognition, the deep understanding of systems that people without my background tend to overlook. Last month, we closed a Series A funding round. The announcement was in the Phoenix Business Journal, the same publication that had run Donovan's feature piece 3 years ago. I'm not going to pretend I didn't feel that. I felt it, fully. My mother sent me flowers, real ones from an actual florist, not the grocery store kind. Sunflowers and white roses in a tall glass vase. The card said, "First of many. I love you, Mom." My father framed the article. I know because he sent me a photo of it in a text message, with no words attached, which was the most emotionally articulate thing Gerald Voss had communicated in my memory. I cried in my car. The good kind. My brother is rebuilding, as far as I can tell. He has a smaller operation now, a partner he seems to genuinely trust. He sent me a 2-sentence email 6 months ago. I heard about the Series A. Congratulations, Celine. You were always the sharper one. I just didn't say so. I haven't responded yet. I'm not ready. That's okay. Some bridges have to stand empty for a while before they're safe to cross again. But the door isn't locked. I run early mornings now before the Phoenix heat makes the world hostile. The desert at 6 a.m. is a different country, quiet and lavender-colored and full of the sound of birds I can't name but have started to recognize by call. I have a desk by the window in my own office for the first time in my life, not a cubicle, not a corner of someone else's space, mine, with good light and a view of a courtyard, and a single framed print on the wall that contains no text, just color, a wash of deep blue and gold that I found at a local artist's market, and that means something to me I haven't fully articulated yet. I have colleagues who argue with me about methodology. I have a boss who tells me my instincts are an asset, not a liability. I have Friday afternoons that I protect fiercely because they're when I do my clearest thinking, uninterrupted, the windows open, the world outside doing its thing. I have a life that I built from the ground up while everyone else was looking at someone else. That is not a complaint. That is the whole point. There is a thing that happens to the overlooked child that nobody talks about because we are so busy making ourselves useful, so busy proving we exist, so busy being capable so that everyone else can afford to be fragile, we sometimes forget to want things for ourselves. We forget to take up space. We forget that our name at the top of a document, our face in a photograph, our seat at the center table, these are not luxuries. They are not extras. They were what was always supposed to be ours. The gala was not revenge. I want to say that clearly because revenge is about destruction, and I didn't want to destroy anything. I wanted the truth to be in the room. I wanted the thing that was real to have more power than the thing that was performed. I wanted to stop being the person sitting at table 14 while somebody else took the stage with money that didn't belong to him, in a name that didn't fit him, in a story that was built on a foundation I could see crumbling from across the room. I am not sitting at table 14 anymore. I am not sitting anywhere I was assigned. I choose my seat now, and I choose it based on where the work is, where the truth is, where the light is, not based on who in my family thinks I should stay small so somebody else can look large. My grandmother on my father's side was a woman named Celestine Voss. She died when I was 16, which was too early, the way all the best losses are. She was a retired school teacher from Tucson who had taught 41 years of fourth grade and could tell within 20 minutes of meeting a child what kind of person they were going to grow up to be. She said she'd never been wrong. I believe her. She told me once, the summer I was 14 and frustrated and feeling invisible in the particular suffocating way of a teenager in a family that doesn't see her, she took both of my hands in hers and looked at me with those clear, direct eyes, and she said, "Celine, baby, some people spend their whole lives trying to get into rooms where they'll be noticed. You're not that kind of person. You're the kind of person who builds the room. You just don't know it yet." I know it now, Grandma. I built the room, and I chose who sat at the center table. It was me. It was always supposed to be me. Before I go, I need to say something directly to you. If you are the one in your family who handles things, the one who is so strong, the one whose feelings are the last to be considered because everyone trusts you to be fine, the one whose name comes up less, whose achievements land softer, whose seat keeps somehow ending up near the kitchen, hear me. Your capability is not a debt you owe. Your strength is not an excuse for other people to stop showing up. The fact that you can survive something is not the same as the fact that you should have to. You are not the family's safety net. You are a person, whole and separate, and deserving of the same oxygen that everyone else is breathing in that room. And if the room you are in has never figured that out, you are allowed to build another one. You are allowed to choose your own seat. You are allowed to drive into the morning that is waiting for you on the other side of every dinner table that was never set with you truly in mind. The overlooked ones don't just survive. We build, we document, we wait for the right moment. And then, when it matters most, in the room where it counts the most, with the people who most need to understand what they missed, we show up. Not for revenge, for the truth. The truth that we were always here, always capable, always worth the seat at the center. They just forgot to look. We never forgot a single thing. That's the end of this one, and I am deeply grateful that you stayed all the way through. Celine's story is for everyone who was ever told their table was near the kitchen, everyone who was patted on the head and looked past, everyone who sat quietly and watched and kept the receipts and waited, not out of bitterness,
but out of an unshakable belief that the truth is always worth telling when the time is right. If something in this story touched something real in you, please leave a comment right now. Tell me about your table 14. Tell me about the moment you stopped being the backup and started being the point. I read every single word you write, and this community is built from those stories. If this is your first time here, welcome to Soulful Drama Stories. This is where the overlooked get the ending they always deserved. Hit subscribe and turn on the bell. We have more stories coming, and they only get more powerful. Thank you for being here today. You didn't just watch a story. You witnessed someone finally take their seat. Now, go take yours. See you in the next one.